This video may be disturbing to some. When I was working on this video, I came across this on Snopes. This article was written in the year 2000, and at the time they said that it was a legend. The article read, "Beheaded child on school bus." This then put me on a path to see if I could find some real cases. And then I came across this terrible story in South Africa. The bus first hit a sign. Everybody was still inside, but the boy then peeked his head out of the window. He wanted to see what was going on. He was sitting near the back, and before you knew it, he was struck by the sign on the second pole. And here they talk about the scene. I then came across another horrible one, and this one was a young girl decapitated by a seatbelt in a car crash. When I first read that, I was like, no, that's probably false. Unfortunately, it was true. I had never heard of a case where someone was decapitated by a seatbelt, so I wanted to share this with other people. This is a very hard video for me to do. I'm actually struggling through it, as you may be able to tell. I'm doing this so maybe it helps one person somewhere. And I also didn't realize that there had been so many fatal limousine accidents either. This is the story of Katie Flynn. Katie Flynn was 7 years old, and she was a bridesmaid in her Aunt Lisa's wedding. And she was very excited about being in the wedding. The bride's family was headed home at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they were in a limousine, and Katie was laying down on the side seat. And this was July 2nd, 2005. In a matter of moments, they were hit head on by a very, very drunk driver. Police said that the driver had had at least 14 drinks and that his blood alcohol level was more than 3 times the legal limit. He was driving 70 miles per hour on the wrong side of the road on a major highway for at least 2 miles before he hit Katie and her family. An off-duty security officer was first on the scene. He walked up to the limo driver and he said that he guesses that he went into shock at that moment. It looked like an explosion. The motor basically was just sitting on top of him. The limo driver was killed instantly. Next to arrive was Lieutenant Michael Tagney, and he was the bride's uncle. He had just attended the wedding a few hours before. He said that I was walking to the rear of the limousine when a gentleman was coming away from it, and he said, "Don't go back there, it's bad." Tagney says, "I opened the rear door to the limousine and I realized that it was my family." Lieutenant Tagney's brother and Jennifer's father, Chris, was lying on the floor. His legs were wrapped around the service bar and they were broken in multiple places. The rest of the family was piled on top of each other. Katie's grandmother Denise was severely injured. Katie's father Neil tried to crawl out of the limo to get help even though he had a broken back. Katie's mother Jennifer told reporters that she had held her daughter's head in her lap at the scene for about an hour while they were cutting her family out of the car. She had to be physically separated from her daughter's head by emergency workers. The drunk driver was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 18 years. His family was devastated and disappointed by the verdict. I guess they didn't want him to be punished at all, huh? Stanley, the limo driver, would give drunk drivers free limo rides home during the 8.5 years he worked as a driver. His sons, Keith and Nolan, still grieve the death of their father. "He was always proud of me and Nolan, no matter what," Kevin says. "Most of his happiness came from us and watching us grow up." Lisa, Katie's aunt, who was also the bride, said that she feels guilt about everything. "We had the limo on the 4th of July weekend. If you look at the stats, that's the WI season. Would this have happened if it wasn't on such a big night? Maybe not," she says. "Those are the decisions that ultimately killed my family. How do we start a life when your start is death? It's your wedding day and now they don't have their child," Lisa said. By knowing the devastation that they've lived through and that they continue to live through, that hopefully people are able to see and view the crime of drunk driving as it should be, and hopefully they can save some lives. I also wanted to share these stories that were also mentioned on Snopes because it involves kids being killed by simply sticking their heads out of a bus window. And I want people to be aware of these because things like this happen in a split second and they can happen to anybody. On May the 20th, 2010 in Detroit, 11-year-old Tiffany was struck by a tree branch and she was killed as she leaned out of the school bus window to say goodbye to her friend Christianna Garcia. Tiffany got on the bus, she took her seat and she leaned out of the window. As the bus pulled away, Tiffany's head struck a tree. Christianna said she stuck her head out of the window and she said, "Christianna," and then I turned around and then her face hit the tree. They both attended Phoenix Multicultural Academy. The EMS arrived to transport Tiffany to Children's Hospital where she passed away. Tiffany's aunt Paula said that she was very smart and that she loved music and she was on the honor roll, and she also loved her teachers. She was a fan of the Twilight books and movies. There were about 10 children on the bus when this happened, and this included Tiffany's younger sister and brother. The driver was removed from his route pending completion of the police investigation, and crisis teams came the next day to meet with students and staff. Parents say that the bus was forced to back out of the parking lot instead of pulling forward, and that they had been asking for signs warning drivers to not park in the path of a bus. One parent said the child shouldn't have even been sitting in the back of the bus. She should have been in the front in a seatbelt. Another bus driver said that the continuous downsizing and the budget cuts and the fact that they removed transportation aides who were there to monitor and protect the children while on buses. And if an aide had been on the bus, this tragedy probably would never have happened. Because of the law, there are still aides on buses transporting special education students, but not on regular routes. And I'll also include a link to an open letter that Tiffany's sister wrote to the bus driver. Phoenix Multicultural Academy closed a few years ago after years of declining enrollment and low academic performance. On May the 8th, 1996, 8th grader Charles Johnson was leaning out of a school bus window to shout to friends when the bus began to move and his head slammed against a tree. And as the bus driver pulled away at 4 p.m., Charles, who was sitting in the back of the bus, was most likely unaware of the tree. Marlon Thomas, who had just gotten off the bus, said he thought that Charles had pulled his head back into the bus in time. And he realized that wasn't the case when he heard someone yelling, "Charles is hurt, Charles is hurt." And the driver stopped and radioed for help. A lady that lives on the corner said that she heard the kids yelling, and she looked out the window and she saw kids just spilling out of the bus with their hands over their faces. She thought that someone had been sprayed with mace. Some of the kids ran to her house and asked her to call an ambulance. Another bus driver that was in the area boarded the bus after noticing that it had abruptly stopped a few feet into an intersection. He tried to administer first aid, but sadly he could not detect any vital signs. Charles was pronounced dead at North Memorial Medical Center in Robbinsdale, Minnesota. Charles died of massive head and neck injuries. The director of transportation, Mickey Johnson, stressed that even the district's youngest students are told to never stick your hands and your head out of a window of a school bus. He said there are 10 or 12 things going on. This happened in a split second. He said, "I doubt that any driver would proceed if a child was hanging out of the window." Charles's friends said that he was popular and that he had that special something that just made people smile. He was smart and kind, and he loved to play basketball, and he loved to flirt with girls. Another friend said that he was like everybody's best friend at school. His parents are Charles and Modine, and he has a sister and 2 brothers. Just 12 days after Charles Johnson was killed, someone called the Minnesota State Patrol complaining that the driver of a charter bus on Highway 100 in St. Louis Park was allowing kids to hang out of the top. That call was then referred to the St. Louis Park Police. Literally moments after, 7th grader Brian Guerin's head hit a bridge. He was 13. He died at Methodist Hospital in St. Louis Park, and it was May the 20th. Brian's family said the accident happened when 4 boys were playing a game to see how high they could jump out of the emergency hatch. There wasn't an alarm to notify the driver that the hatch had even been opened. When someone yelled "bridge," Brian was the only one that didn't duck his head. On top of the bus, there were 5 hatches. 4 were covered with a metal bar. Brian stuck his head out of the one without a bar. State Patrol Trooper Michael Hansen said that Brian's head cleared the first part of the bridge but struck the 5th beam. The bridge at the time had a posted clearance of 14 feet, but actually measures 15 feet, which means Brian's torso was about 14 inches out of the hatch. There were chaperones on the bus, but they were on the bottom level. The company, Lorenz Bus Service, required youth groups to have a chaperone on the bus, but they didn't have a set number. The bus was bringing about 60 youth back to a synagogue following an outing, and the accident happened at the Minnetonka Boulevard Bridge over Minnesota Highway 100. That particular bridge has been demolished and replaced. It looks like this now. Brian sang in the choir and played on the basketball and baseball teams, and he left behind a loving family, relatives, and too many friends to count. His parents are Donald and Lynn Guerin. He has a brother, Danny, and he has a sister named Jackie. Brian made everyone feel special. Because Brian and Charles's deaths were so close together in the same state, it really pushed bus safety to the forefront. See you in the next video.